It had to be said, the Oregon State Highway Division not only had a whale of a problem on its hands, it had a stinking whale of a problem. What to do with one 45-foot, 8-ton whale dead on arrival?
55 years, we're reliving the greatest tale that Oregon has ever told. What does the exploding whale mean to you?
Well, it's kind of evolved over time. There were years where I really didn't want to talk about it, and people would bring it up. And, you know, I'm a reporter who, like all reporters, lifetime, I've covered thousands of stories, and some of them were pretty significant. I've been inside the White House, I've followed presidential campaigns, and met a lot of people in high stations in life, and I'm very proud of the work that I did along the way, but the only one that ever gets mentioned to me is the whale. And so for a long time I didn't have a good attitude about that until somebody virtually told me face to face, hey, most of us aren't remembered for anything. Shut up about people remembering the whale. So that's been my attitude ever since, and I've learned to more or less live with it. I'd hope that other people would remember some of the more significant things I've done as a reporter over the years, but if they don't, like the friend said, you're remembered for something.
One of the things that, I grew up as an Oregonian, but one of the things that has always struck me about that story is the way you emphasized what has now become a slogan, a whale of a tale. Tell me about that.
Well, it's a cliche, and I don't know. I guess under the gun to write a script and get it on the air in time, I took the easy way out and went with the cliche without realizing it might catch on in certain ways, in the way that it has. But people identify with it, and I've lived with that.
Did you get a wow?
In this day of news gathering, as you know, it's instantaneous. Walk me through that process of having to drive to Florence and then coming back to Portland and then putting that tape on the air.
Well, Florence is about a 3.5 to 4 hour car trip. And we got back in the car and we just reeked. I mean, as I said, when the thing went off, I looked down at my raincoat and it was pinkish glistening on my raincoat. And those items of apparel are in the car with you on the way back. And so we had the wind wings open or the windows part way down, and it wasn't a fun trip back. It was a long trip. And then when we got back to find that we'd left the major magazine of film down there, that was just crushing. And by then it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and somebody's going to have to go retrieve that. And Doug said, I'll go. And I said, I'll meet you in the freeway and I'll ride down with you. But fortunately, the airport manager was coming to Portland, and he called us and said, hey, I've got your film. I'm going to drive it up. And we were off the hook. But what a dumb move for a reporter, right?
Have you ever experienced anything quite like that smell afterward?
No, I haven't. There used to be a meat rendering plant out near Heron Lakes Golf Course. And occasionally I'd be playing golf and the wind would be blowing from that plant and I could smell it. It came close, but nothing really. I mean, it was just overwhelming and sickening. And people around me, I mean, people were getting sick, and I don't have the strongest stomach in the world, and I came close, but it was awful, and such that, you know, when you get in the car and other people who hadn't been there are rolling down windows to keep from smelling you, it was quite a shocker.
What is something that you would like viewers, say 55 years from now, when they look back at the story, what would you like them to know about that experience?
Well, that's a good question. The fact was, I like being a reporter. I like doing important stories. And that one was not important, obviously. And I didn't recognize the value of it at the time. I didn't recognize how people would respond to it, and I wasn't prepared for the way they did. But I cover that story today in the very same way. I mean, what a goofy thing. And if you're going to be the reporter covering a goofy thing, you better be a little goofy yourself in your script and how you present it. And so I've got no complaints, no regrets about how we did the story. And I am thankful today for all the reaction. I mean, like I say, I've done thousands of TV stories, and apparently none of the rest of them were very significant.
Are you surprised at the reaction that this story has gotten? We mentioned on AM Northwest, we've seen what the Eugene Emeralds have done, the Portland Pickles have done similar things. There's now an Exploding Whale Festival. In your wildest imagination, did you ever think that this story would go to that height?
Never, never. If you're a longtime reporter, you have a one-day memory. I mean, that was yesterday's story, and now where are we going today? And for it to live on like this, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And occasionally you'll see on New Year's Day, looking back at the last year's news or whatever. But to have this continue to be a constant item of conversation or attention in the community, and to those who don't even know me but would recognize me as being a part of that and come up and want to talk about it, I'm thankful for it, but enough already.
What are you doing these days after you left TV and radio?
Well, I like to work on book projects, and so I've done some books. Writing is one of those painful, fun things, and presently, don't laugh, I'm working on a book of poetry that I've never done before, which is just so much fun. I read this, I wish I could quote who said this, but somebody said, poetry is language condensed, and you can cover a lot of ground in a very short space with poems. And so that's what I'm messing with now. And whether anything gets published or not really doesn't matter to me. I'm having a good time with it. I'm a high school baseball umpire for fun and recreation. During the spring and summer months, I do 3 games a week. I think I did 40-some games last year. And I like being around the kids. I love the game of baseball. I was a baseball player. Excuse me. And these kids today, they're playing their hearts out and having a good time. And to be a part of that is a lot of fun. There is a problem, though. If you're an umpire, you are the ultimate arbiter. And you better know those rules. And if you've never looked at a baseball rule book, it is complex and detailed. And so around the season, I am constantly in that rule book so I don't get caught short in a game and don't know a rule.
55 years of the Exploding Whale. What does that story mean to you?
Well, it's one of the unusual stories in my life, of course. And I think what made it interesting, excuse me a moment, can we re-roll?
Absolutely.
Got a bit of a cold and see you later. Okay. Yep.
I know. He's used to being he's front and center.
So anyway, getting back to the whale story, it's unusual to find any story that has such longevity, but this seems to be holding on. And it was something that impacted my life very briefly and has come back to, well, I wouldn't say haunt, but has certainly been a real game changer when it comes to remembering things in my past history. Yeah, so.
Of the thousands of news stories that you have been on and you've shot and edited and told, where would you even rank this one? Not knowing the fame, but just just looking back, where would this one even stick out to you years afterwards?
Well, that's a really difficult one to answer because it does stick out, obviously, because of the popularity and what's happened to it. The story itself about blowing up a whale on the beach, that's kind of one of those things that just happens, and at least the Highway Division thought so. And so I would say overall, it's unusual that it's gotten the legs it has, and I don't regret it. It's still very interesting to run into people who say, "Oh yeah, exploding whale," So that's cool.
When you look back at this story, in your wild imagination, did you ever think it would have the legs that it has today?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, When we looked at the story, it sounded very interesting. It was pre-internet, so it didn't get a lot of play. And then eventually it ended up on the internet, and things started happening. But just the story itself, it was okay, so we covered it, and that was it. It was covered in a humorous way, but still.
I know in the days, it's still true when it comes to news gathering, you're never quite sure when something will happen. Obviously, ODOT had to reach out to you guys saying, hey, we have a whale, we're probably going to explode. Before you even left Portland, did you have any idea what time this possibly was going to happen, or was it one of those things where let's just get to Florence and see what happens?
Well, I think they had basically said that they're going to do this blow up during that day. They want to get rid of it. And so we had to basically put a flight together very quickly and get down there. Luckily, we landed at a little private, not private, but airport there, and they had a courtesy car. So the owner of the airport, or the building, the FBO as they call it, he offered us the car, so we were able to get transport down to the place. But things are happening already by the time we landed at the beach. They were already getting ready to place the dynamite. So it was a very closely timed thing.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I love about the footage that you guys have is there was a couple that brought some lawn chairs out onto the beach that were going to watch this from a close range. What was going through your mind as you're watching these people place those chairs?
Well, when you consider the amount of dynamite that was going down there, you'd go, well, do you have any idea what you're doing here? There's a big stinky piece of whale here that they're going to blow up, and that's a lot of dynamite. In fact, somebody went up to the guy and told him that that was more dynamite than they possibly needed, and he was a demolitions expert. So anyway, that's another story.
I asked Paul this question, I'll ask it to you too. 55 years from now, when somebody looks back on the story, what is one thing that you want them to know about it?
I can't think of any one thing, but I would say just to say that something unusual like that, that's given a little bit of a twist of humor, even though it's a serious subject, can have a longevity of its own.
That's fantastic. Doug, I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much.